I deal with SMEs from all spheres of life. I deal with SMEs with the different motivations of why they're going into entrepreneurship or business. So for me, the missing sort of link is that there are opportunities in as far as interventions and funding and teaching you how to be funding and market ready, but they don't appreciate the process. I think we live in very interesting yet scary times with the rise of the AI and what it's able to do. And that's why it's important to just learn as much as you can and find your place where you fit. What part of the puzzle are you? And make the best of it.
How are you, Ma?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good, good. It's March 2025 already. Can you believe it?
Time has wings. I can hardly believe it, but here we are.
Here we are, like we always say.
My favorite thing to say, here we are.
Do you think people are still focusing on the New Year's resolution when March gets there? Or by March, it starts fading away back to your old patterns?
Hey, Catalyst family. If you're here, it means you're all about growth, inspiration, and game-changing conversations. And trust me, you're in the right place. Our show, and I call it ours because it's yours and mine, is not just a podcast. It's a movement. We bring you raw, unfiltered, and inspirational stories from innovators, entrepreneurs, and game changers who are shaping the future, and you get to be a part of the conversation. So, if you're ready to elevate your mindset, be part of a thriving community, and build real connections, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. And while you're here, please do drop a comment below. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and let us know what topics you'd like to see and hear next. And let's grow together. Remember, every conversation is a catalyst for something bigger. Welcome to the movement, and welcome to the Catalyst Conversations. Yeah, you know what? I think January is a denial month, right? There's back to school, there's plans that you have to implement, and people are coming back from holiday, so they haven't really eased in. And February for me was a false start because I still had to plan. I was traveling, and a lot of people are easing back into universities are opening mostly in around February.
Yeah.
So March for me is when actually the year officially begins, because financial year ends for most companies is the end of February. So literally, this is the year beginning for me. So yeah, I would say so.
But on a personal level, do you feel like by March, people actually still have all those New Year's resolutions that they came up with? Like, yeah, this year I'm going to do this. Or by March, it feels like, hey, let me just go back to factory reset. What's your opinion on that?
Through my experiences with going to gym, because I go to gym Monday to Friday, and the gym is a whole lot more quieter. Those resolutions that people were rushing into, I want to get my body right. It fizzles out if you're not serious. Unless you make it a lifestyle change, then it's just going to be a fad that you do at the beginning of the year. You're not seeing it through. So if I were to go with what I see in the gym, not so much.
Too much.
Yeah, that's where you lose momentum. Reality's kicking in. You're getting into your routine. And if you haven't really made life-changing transitions, then it's
Like
not going
to
to show.
factory reset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I feel like the same also apply for business, because most of the time people start the year with those ambitions. I'm going to register at TIPC. I'm going to be doing all the stuff by the books, etc. But when it comes to March, they feel like because they haven't achieved what they plan to achieve in the first quarter of the year, they tend to go back to the usual, like maybe it's time to go and look for a job. Maybe it's time to do that.
And that's why I always say, Yann, to my associates and people I also mentor, that when you decide something, be willing to do what it takes. Because if it's, like a previous guest said, if it's just a 21-day plan, then what happens after the 21 days? That's why decisions start now, not tomorrow, not Monday. It's not realistic. If you're serious, if it hurts enough, if you're serious about it enough, you'll act immediately and make it your new norm going forward for any change to be effective and sustainable.
I think for me, it has more to do with the difference between discipline and consistency versus motivation. I feel like lots of people make decisions based on motivations, but it's not sustainable in the long term.
It's not. It's artificial. It's like drinking a Red Bull. It wears off and then you crash, right?
Correct.
Because it's momentary. But if it's something that you're doing for a lifelong change, you have to have a blueprint. You have to have a roadmap, a plan. You have to show up. One of the things I said when I started my fitness journey was, yes, vanity is important. Yes, I want to look good in certain clothes, but my primary focus and my priority was to be consistent and disciplined. So showing up whether I'm tired, whether it's raining, whether I don't feel like it, like literally, I really don't have the energy. But you show up, and as soon as you're in there, you'll be surprised. You've made it that far. You might as well see it through.
True.
So you're absolutely right. Consistency, discipline are important much more than any other motivation could ever assist you in getting anywhere.
What would you say helps you to stay consistent even in those days where you just don't feel like leaving your bed? What keeps you going?
So I believe in tricking myself. Everybody should study primarily themselves. I always sing the same gospel. For me, the way I trick myself is I love, gifts, rewards, incentives, right? You go to gym a certain number of times a week, you get a free smoothie, or it's such a silly little thing because I can afford to buy myself a smoothie, but it makes you feel like you've achieved something. So the art of self-management, that's how I trick myself. I show up and then it becomes something that I cannot live without because my energy levels dip just like they would if I'm unmotivated or if I'm feeling sad or low. So you choose to use a place like gym, a place like work, as a place for you to thrive and be your best. I love the evolution of growing a little older, growing a little wiser, in the networks. So the gym I chose is basically, which is convenience for me within the same vicinity that I live.
Yes.
So it makes it a little bit easier as opposed to having traveled a distance. So if it's raining, I know, I'll survive the rain for 5 minutes or whatever the case may be. I know I'll feel good afterwards. I'll know I'll get my free smoothie after like being there consistently for a certain number of days a week. So it goes back to self-management, knowing yourself. And sometimes you don't want to show up, but you do because it's a trade-off.
And I feel like that free smoothie feels extremely different than any other smoothies.
Anything that is not spent, like I don't have to spend my money for. Like it's free. There you go. It's not. You work for it, but you don't have to pay out of pocket. It feels like a little reward, right? And that's why I encourage even my peers who run businesses to reward behavior. What gets rewarded gets repeated, I believe. So if somebody is doing their best in the office and you don't give them a little reward of appreciation, we see you, we validate you, we appreciate you, keep doing it. You become a little demotivated. So beyond obviously looking good, feeling good, and then I get a free smoothie, heaven for me.
But I think it also has to do with the fact that you're continuously tracking your activities, and having that free smoothie makes you feel like you've accomplished something throughout the entire week. Because when you think of it, you could buy your own smoothie.
Yes,
but the smoothie that you feel like, as much as it's free because you did not pay in monetary value, but you worked hard for it, then it becomes like a reward.
Earned it.
Yeah.
You earned buying it, you feel like it's instant gratification. It's very easy. But one that even, what I love about the app, which I apply in my own business, there's learnings and lessons everywhere if you're paying attention, right? So it gives you a report of how you've done in the previous week.
Yes.
Or it's so gratifying to have a frame of reference of what you have achieved. Because when you are in your default factory setting, you are just on autopilot. But as soon as you sit down and reflect, oh my, I went 4 times a week last week. This week is 5. Perhaps I could do 6, right? And you always want to beat your best. And that's what I love about these tracking and monitoring tools that show you where you are, that show you where you went wrong, and give you an opportunity to rectify it and don't let history repeat itself.
Because I'm a fervent believer that what gets tracked and what gets measured gets improved. And I think the concept of the app is something that people can easily apply in each and every single direction of their lives, including the businesses. Because too often as a business, when you start, and especially when you start generating revenue, you get lost into the spending, etc., but actually not sitting down and tracking down, being frugal about each and every single one of the expenses that you encounter into your business. Is it actually serving me? Is it improving me? Is it adding value into my business? And the concept of tracking is something that I feel like most SMEs and most entrepreneurs and startups tend to learn when it's already too late. And most of the time it's when SARS comes.
And knocks on your door and you're like, how and when did we get here, right? You're absolutely right. I feel tracking is very important because you can measure, and there's important data there in tracking, right? To use silly everyday examples, I have come into a habit of going through my statement every month. It's easy to miss that line item that might have gone in there, and you're like, collectively, it's been going off every month at the end of the year. It might be a couple of thousands that you could have done something tangible with.
Yes.
I know of a story in the banks where people were stealing from certain accounts, like R1 here, and it accumulatively came up to millions after a certain period of time of getting away with it. Now imagine if each and every one of those account holders said it would have been caught out before it could even be that go into the millions. So you're right. What gets tracked and measured has invaluable impact in as far as what you can do, what you can pick up, what you can learn from. And it's easy to pick up things that, you have to correct much earlier.
But I think there's a major issue in South Africa where most people actually do not spend time tracking their expenses. As much as there's infinite amount of apps that you can use.
Yes.
Most people do not do that. And I do believe it's because they are scared of the true realities of where they actually spend their money.
We don't want to hold the mirror to ourselves.
Exactly.
You're right. There's Clear Score. There's one, I think it also 24/7.
24/7.
That 22/7 or
22/7.
22/7. It was an amazing free app. I don't remember who it was by.
It's Nedbank.
It was a Nedbank.
Yeah.
Correct. I loved that tool because you can consolidate all your accounts. They give you sort of a dashboard overview of what you spent, what you have, and predicting what you're going to spend if you go on that trend, right? It's an amazing tool. If we get over, that cringe idea of seeing how reckless we actually are with our spending, I mean, that's the only way to do better, right? Hold the mirror to yourself and say, oof, here's an area of improvement. Let me deliberately work on it. So, yeah, let's deal with the hard stuff so that there's no patterns and history does not repeat itself.
And truth being told, that lack of accountability is actually the reason why most entrepreneurs end up not getting funded. I've had conversations with a lot of investors and they literally say openly, like, before considering investing into anyone's company, I ask them to show me the private bank statement because I want to see how they spend the money. I want to see how much they decide to invest into, save, etc. What's the percentage? Are they actually tracking it, or they just spend recklessly?
Yeah, and I mean, if you go into even the professional spaces, I know there's a lot of financial institutes that do not hire people that have bad credit.
Yeah.
Because if you can't manage self,
How are you gonna
manage our money, right? It's intricate things like that. Even the banks considers even your spending habits. Even if you have a clear sort of path on how you take care of your financial affairs, there's that line item that you took a business card to go buy something at the liquor store.
Betway.
It's exact or Betway. That's another one that was recurring in discussions that we had with SMEs. Why on earth would you have that? Pay yourself first, a salary, do whatever you want. Go live in Betway 3 times a week. That's your business. But your business image ought to be clean and clear and reflect where you want to go as an entrepreneur in a business. So those are the things we have to be mindful of as SMEs.
But you feel like it's a lack of respect for your business and understanding it as its own entity, or it's a lack of knowledge of knowing how to run the business?
I think it's a combination of two. I mean, if you're in business, you need to learn everything there is to learn about the business of business. But also, awareness is something that obviously is easily accessible if you seek it out. There are platforms that are numerous. You will find it if you're seeking it, right? Seeking you shall find, literally, right? We talk about biblical principles a lot, and that's the real life application of it. There is amazing resources that are free of charge, so we can't tolerate excuses of people saying, "Oh, it costs money." Even if it costs money, invest in it. I mean, we had a conversation here now about personal development and investing in that. How many times have you pulled over by a drive-through and bought ice cream or a sundae that costs over 50 Rand? And if you could buy a certain tool, a subscription for 50 Rand that builds you, give up that ice cream.
I mean, Udemy, on FNB, you can subscribe, unless they've increased the price, but you can subscribe and follow one Udemy course on F&B just with 50 to 75 rand.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And what does that get you versus what you put in? Yes, I saw that on F&B, and I actually wanted to probe a little further because I do placements as well. And the idea is to try to develop sort of job seekers to be employment ready. Because often when you put out your CV, you don't know what you could improve. We don't always get feedback. Where did I go wrong? Why was I not successful? All you get is a regret letter, right? And we thought, let's fix that and get the pool of the same people, whether it was your CV, how you were communicating and positioning yourself, and or what you were reflecting in it. Does it speak to the actual job description of the job you're applying for? And the skills that are needed on proficiency in certain things that employers always look out for. And that's why I believe in also psychometric assessments, because it gives you a sense of where the person is lacking, where they could improve, and then you begin a journey. It's sort of a gap analysis to say, speak to my immediate needs. Let's find the interventions for them. Let's equip and capacitate these problems. You go to a doctor, the symptoms are treated, right? And then now you're healthy and you are market ready. And then we can plug you to whoever seeks the services and offerings that you have.
What would you say is the value of psychometrics from an employer perspective and from an employee? What can they learn from it? What is the key role that it plays?
You know, there are a lot of job seekers that seek for jobs for different varying reasons, right? Some, and the most obvious is the attraction of a package. And that's why you get people asking you if you are in placements, or how much is the job worth, right? And that's if it's not within the desired tax bracket, then they fall off. But if you get somebody who says, okay, I'm keen, let's do the psychometric assessments, it does qualitative and quantitative matrix measuring of saying, let's do a summary of how this person views the world, if they are teachable, if they have leadership qualities, or if they're going to show up and be, the boss's pet. And the accuracy is almost 100% accurate, because sometimes when we do a placement and we get feedback 3 months later that there had to be a disciplinary hearing because this person had a tantrum in full view of subordinates, the psychometric assessment would have told you that, and in terms of how they see the world and how they're positioned. So I think it's invaluable and an amazing tool to invest in, to get a sense of who you're dealing with. And if you have a budget and interest or compassion to do something about it, and spend money training them if they're teachable, because that's one of the things that it shows you. It sort of covers all aspects to say, this is exactly what you're dealing with. Are you willing to then forego one aspect because you value where they're strong? And are you willing to make that investment to correct it? Or you just don't want that poison in your company? It couldn't be your business. You just want somebody who's a green flag all over. So you have that option. So I think it's an invaluable tool that a lot of people ought to invest in, so that you don't, if you want to build your dream team, that is a surefire way to ensure that you're clear.
What are your most funny psychometric stories?
Yeah, I have a few, but I think I'll share one. We looked in haste for the traits that we wanted for a certain position and overlooked the others. But if you sit with people that perhaps the service providers of these psychometric assessments and say, help me get a comprehensive report of what the summary means, because we usually, because of time and haste, look at just the highlights and the summation. But if you delve deep and say, let me pay for an hour of your consultation as a person who's a psychologist to say what implications this has really, and paint scenarios and case studies, and to say this is likely going to be the outcome, we would have saved ourselves a lot of drama. We had people who were in a certain department. One was a line manager and another subordinate. They were the same sort of personality traits, right? They act when they want the job, but it's going to wear off really quickly. And they were at butt heads. We ended up eventually having to spend a lot of money in litigation, getting an outside service provider to mediate disciplinary hearings. And we have to do the South African labor laws protect the employer in as far as the process. And you learn a lot, because there's first warning, second warning, and hearings, etc. And you have to do things according to labor laws. You can't skip and say, "Oh, I don't like you, you're fired."
Yes.
Right? CCMA exists because of these very reasons. It has to be a fair process where you hear people out and then the outcomes come through, whether it's a moderate, minor, or a serious sort of finding. Those are the things we consider. And we spend truckloads of money. But in retrospect, we then reversed how we do things in part of our recruitment and onboarding process. And we prioritized delving deep into the assessment to avoid those disasters. So yeah, personality clashes where the same personality is like fighting with yourself, literally a subordinate who's very skilled at what they do. And then a line manager who's also very skilled, and then they're two bulls in one crawl. There's issues of insubordination, personality clashes, tears, things being flung around the office. But the assessment told us all that we needed to know if we had paid attention.
So most of
That's just one of a myriad of stories that I have. Yeah.
most of the time, you could have avoided the problem.
100%. And that's why I love data. That's why I love, assessments. That's why I appreciate the investment that goes into learning scenarios and case studies. Not all mistakes must be yours for you to learn from. If you can learn from somebody else, you can adopt the same kind of thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. If it works, why fix it if it's not broken?
There is an ongoing trend, I would say, not necessarily trend, but there has been a lot of stats that have shown that 2Ks are really struggling to penetrate the corporate world.
It is such an interesting situation because recently we had to hire for a junior position, and obviously the age group is the 2000 2Ks, right? Gen Z. And out of the 45 that we invited for interviews, only 2 showed up. Some interviewed well telephonically, and then obviously we have to do proficiency testing, and that's obviously a face-to-face physical engagement. And they dropped off unceremoniously. No courtesy of saying, lie to me.
Yeah.
You have the decency to say, something happened, at least give me that regard to say, I'm afraid I won't make it. And then you call them, and then they give you some story. Oh, I'm not interested anymore. Oh, I don't think. Oh, the vibes. One of the worst things I've heard. It wasn't giving me vibes. And I thought, you're talking to an HR professional. You're talking to somebody that is keen to get you employed and give you an opportunity of a lifetime. And you dare to tell me about you weren't feeling the vibes, right? And it's been, I wish it was an isolated sort of occurrence, but it happens more times than not. But on the flip side of the coin, you have amazing people who are also Gen Zs who have amazing energy and ideas. And the confidence is also something we appreciate because it's like an adrenaline injection into a company that brings freshness and a new perspective we wouldn't even consider, right? So that's the opposite flip of the coin that you could all also just enjoy if you get the right kind of Gen Z.
So would you say it's corporate that's not really adapting to the Gen Z, or it's the Gen Z that are not adapting into the corporate?
It's both.
It's both.
It's both. Gen Zs have a wider appreciation of a sense of self, confidence. There's more Gen Z millionaires in the tech space. There's Gen Zs that are making a living out of the content creation economy, right? Even gambling, even gaming. I heard of a 19-year-old who won $5 million of gaming and his fingers were on the trigger. And his mother's like, this is a surprise to me in as far as how much it's worth, that my son is an instant millionaire, but I'm not surprised because all he does is close himself in the room and this is what he's doing. I guess now I understand, right? And because they have access to information at a click of a finger, they understand if you want to a podcast on anything, personal growth, business growth, financial literacy, at a click of a finger. There's a lot of self-taught millionaires, content creators, marketers. A lot of people are shying away from going the traditional academic route to say, I don't need to spend $500,000 for an MBA. I have an MBA at YouTube. I can get my MBA on YouTube. Self-taught bakers to say, let me learn how to bake a cake. Access is just as easy as a snap of a finger. So I think we live in very interesting yet scary times. with the rise of the AI and what it's able to do. And that's why it's important to just learn as much as you can and find your place where you fit. What part of the puzzle are you, and make the best of it as you possibly can.
But I think it also has to do with the access to information. When you think of it, the generations before struggled to actually have access to information. The only way of learning was to register for university, for a course, etc. And because of that, they've limited themselves in their way of seeing and learning outside of the foundation that they are known for.
100%.
But Gen Zs have access to technology, they've got access to information. So they are not scared to turn down a corporate job because they know I could literally still go on YouTube and learn a skill that's going to still allow me to earn a living.
Absolutely.
I might not necessarily know how to manage it, how to be consistent with it, but I will still be able to reinvent myself over and over because access to education and to information, it's something that I have at my fingertip.
It's such a jigsaw for me because with Gen Zs, they could tell you if you're doing an interview, oh, is it in person or virtual? And you say in person, it's like, why? Do I need to drive, shower? I could sit here at home. It saves me time. I'm not interested, right? It's one of the many incidents that has happened with that. But I think what we lose with that, how easy and accessible things are. Back in our day, you had to go to a corporate environment, interact, have somebody mentor you and hold your hand. So the human connection, even with classrooms, you go there like accompanied by your friends, you're having conversation, there's a human aspect. We take that for granted. That's part of the journey.
True.
You go into the classroom, there's a teacher in front of you, you ask questions, you engage. There's that affinity that you form, that's human connection. And I feel the missing sort of link with the digital age is exactly that. And that's why there's a lot of insensitivity with youth with how they deal with the elders or even the peers, right? We live in an era of impatience. I don't have to deal. I'm an island, and with the rise of digital nomads, you can get on a plane and work from anywhere. You don't have to deal with anybody in person, right? Everything, your computer is your best friend. Your phone is your best friend. Your laptop is your best friend. So each of them has their own sort of blessings and curses. But I think the missing link with Gen Z is that human connection, even with customer service. I mean, you get somebody saying, oh, I don't have to deal with you. What? In my day, customer was key. Right? You ensure that you cater to every need, even predict it, that they don't ever have to ask for it. And I think that is invaluable. That is gold, but we're losing it a lot today. With the online sort of advent, there's little to no interaction with people. I miss sometimes going to the store and speaking to the teller or speaking with somebody in the queue. That Ubuntu, human connection. I think it's something I value. But these days, it's not what it used to be.
Okay. I think I'll take the conversation slightly in a different direction. Talking about ESDs, which is
my field.
Your field.
Yeah.
What would you say a business, an SME, needs to do to be ready and to fully profit from an ESD program?
Be ready to be supported, to be taught, and be teachable. I deal with SMEs from all spheres of life. I deal with SMEs with the different motivations of why they're going into entrepreneurship or business. So for me, the missing sort of link is that there are opportunities in as far as interventions and funding and teaching you how to be funding and market ready, but they don't appreciate the process. Microwave solutions, you want funding and this paperwork. I'm going to get you a funder that's probably going to get you a 10-page document back to back, asking you very difficult questions. And it goes to what we were saying earlier. People are not willing to do the difficult stuff, to hold the mirror to themselves. And that's rather unfortunate. And it's very admin intensive. And you're forced to learn as you go. I cannot possibly fund you if I'm not sure that you're a good horse to bet on. And what tells me that is this tedious paperwork and to say, I don't think you're ready. Let us get you to being ready. And that means learning, being teachable, and also being compliant. We spoke about SARS knocking at your door. It's not all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know what you're obligated to do. You know your CIPC is going to deregister if you don't pay your annual returns. You need to track and monitor where you are. Oh, in 3 months' time, have a reminder. However, whatever your tools are that you use to make sure that you're tracking. And you know, oh, I have to pay. This is how much it costs. You're in good standing. And I find that it's rather unfortunate that people even lose opportunities when they walk the path and then drop the ball and the opportunity comes and they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? So that's one of the things I would implore SMMEs to do. Track. Be okay with paperwork or get somebody to do it for you.
Yeah.
If colleges offer interns, give them an opportunity for 12 to 18 months. You're not liable for payment. They will be paid by the seaters. And you give them what they need, experience. They give you what you need, a pair of hands to do something you do not have the time or the desire to do. So I think there are lots of support interventions available. Just be willing to walk the path and also ensure that you empower the people that are in your employ so that the business doesn't collapse without you.
And now on the other side, what would you say a business needs to do to actually properly offer ESD programs that can fully develop the SMMEs and not just have it being a KPI, a taking KPI exercise?
We talked about this earlier about, unfortunately, to some degree, it has to be a tick box exercise because they have sort of milestones they want to hit. And we have to then prove that certain interventions are given. We need to give portfolio of evidence to say, have you met your quota? What is the quota? Oh, if you can ensure that 100 Black women-owned companies have access to these interventions, that is my measuring tool to say you have met my KPIs. We're there to solve each other's problems. What's the problem of the SMME? Perhaps lack of education when it comes to how to be a strong, sound, sustainable business. And what do we as ESD practitioners need to do to position ourselves to bridge the divide between the stakeholder and the SMME to say, this is what I need, and we help them with that transition. I think there is room for ESDs in as far as even going beyond the red tape of, tick boxing. But what I always say is we need to reverse engineer, right? Cater, these are the problems that we have. Let us see what's available and walk the long game. It's a process, right? And ensure that you capacitate them, that you have the money for it.
Yeah.
Be strategic. And I think mostly the missing link is not having processes and systems that are, measurable, that have strong impact and that are sustainable. And that's why there's a mismatch and a miscommunication between the two. I just wish we could have prolonged workshops and focus group discussions of, like I say, difficult dialogue to say, this is not working. Let's go back to the drawing board and apply and implement something that does.
True.
Even if it has to be a 10-year program. Unfortunately, a lot of people won't want to hear that. Like 10 years for what? It goes by so quickly. 5 years goes by quickly. 3 years goes by quickly. So even if it's just a prescribed period of time dealing with compliance, a prescribed period of time dealing with market readiness, and also training you to be sustainable and, there has to come a time where you don't need me anymore as an ESD to say, I've benefited from it. I am now a high-end SMME, and my responsibility is to take care and plug in and give opportunities to those who were where I was some 5-10 years ago.
Obviously, you've been in the ESD industry for quite a while now. What are the companies or what are the SMMEs that you've seen being part of those incubators, those interventions that have very, very positive stories out of it?
There's beautiful success stories with a few, especially women and youth. And youth who came in as youth when they started, but after a while they do not fall within that bracket anymore. And people with disabilities as well. People who take absolute advantage of what is being offered and are willing to do what it takes. What it takes is never fun, Yann. I will not lie. Even sometimes, as ourselves as ESD practitioners, we find it exhausting, and because it's an exhaustive process to ensure that you walk the journey, right? Because we want you to be sustainable. There's women in fuel who supply fuels to mining houses who had been in the incubation program and process, frustrated, even giving us flack, right? But we told them, wait it out, walk it out, it will pay off. And pay off it did at the end of the day when they get multi-million rand deals for procurement opportunities. And I think also with sort of the organizations and stakeholders that we're involved with, some of the conversations we've had is, can we sit in your procurement steering committees and see what opportunities you have as set aside for these SMEs so that we can equip them, even if they're not successful. Give us an opportunity to go back and say, this is the black mark. This is what we're going to fix. Don't give me a regret letter in a form of an email, and don't give me feedback and not give me feedback about why I was not successful. So those are the things we've identified and paid attention to and started doing something about. And I think it's paying off because the success stories that we have, when they relate the testimony and stories, they'll tell you the frustration of being trained on things they didn't think they needed at the time, but they see the value much later because it helps with the company, with the organic, like holistic growth of the company. And also how to plug into the ecosystem of the ESD space, because there's also a beautiful ecosystem where if you're a success story, everybody loves a winner, right? And if you've done well and you're doing well, somebody else might want to give you support to say, I see what you're doing. We could use a platform to help others, right? And also just impart the story of the struggles so that they can have a deeper and sounder understanding of what it takes. Because if I don't have something to refer to, it's not going to be something that I desire. You tell me 3 to 5 years in an incubation program? Come on. And by the time 5 years hit, you're still in the same position as you started. Whereas if you had taken advantage of this platform that's freely available to you, you could be somewhere.
Is it like a long, is it a daily course that you have to go through, or it's 1 week, weekly activities? How does it normally get structured?
So there's sort of different paths in that one pathway might be a stakeholder saying we have a certain caliber of SME in our community, do a 12-month course and give them accreditation, right? Or recognition of attendance or something of that sort. But it's something that we need to know through a certification of sorts that they've gone through and understand, so that when they are in our supplier database, the people who are qualified and understand what it takes. I mean, Yann, you can't go to a mining house and say you want to drill without any qualifications, without having gone through what it takes, venture creation, how to handle finances. If we entrust in you with all this responsibility, we need to trust that you can see it through successfully, right? Safety is a big one in the mines. You have to pass technical assessments. So it's not a prescribed period of time. It might be fit for purpose. It might be project driven, or it might be walk the journey. A lifespan of most companies, if it's going to fail within 3 years, you'll know it, right? 3 to 5 years. And that's why the incubation journey is between 3 to 5 years. And you could be fortunate. There's people who are compliant and are in that group of, ensuring compliance, and they get an opportunity because they're consistent, because they are out there and they seem the seen as cooperative, right? So that's why I advocate for people, just show up and do what it takes. And if it's not for you, then great. If you want to find another path, do it. But there's a million ways to skin a cat. And in the context of the prescription of the courses, it's fit for purpose, it's custom made, and we're guided by not only the SMEs' needs, but the stakeholder in as far as what they want to achieve for the SMEs.
Okay. I think what we will do on this specific video, we will add a link in the description that will have a form where every single SME could then fill up and get added into our database.
Great.
For prospect ESTs and program where we feel like they could fit in.
Yeah.
But we'll also drop an email for any corporate to then contact you and find out the database and the companies you would then have available to plug into the ESDs.
100%. And there's there's a lot of sectors and a lot of SMMEs in different sectors who do not have exposure, knowledge, and awareness of what's available. And there's a lot of ESD, or companies or banks. Even banks have ESD programs, right? But the reach is something that they're not quite getting to because it's not the area of focus per se. And we do focus group discussions, market surveys. We go into communities and we have SMMEs. So I think building a broader database to speak to both parties, I'm happy that we're going to have that opportunity to make sure that we bridge that divide.
What industry have you seen a pattern of being more attracted towards offering ESDs?
Mining,
Mm-hmm.
in the main. In the past 6 to 7 years, a lot of mining houses have very strong, interesting ESD programs to help what we call the neighborhood communities where the mines are based. But even in recent years, banks are also coming to the party in as far as that concerned, because the missed opportunity also with banking is for financial literacy. Almost everybody has a bank account or ought to have a bank account, right? And there's an opportunity to make sure that they are positioned positively and strategically to ensure that the finance ready, they know how to do the finances. They have products and offerings that are geared towards that, right? Development, financial literacy, etc. So yeah, mining space, I think banking space, and a lot of engineering companies. I think also something that we don't talk enough about is the skills development aspect with TVET colleges coming into the ecosystem to say there's job seekers who might necessarily be ready to be SMMEs in as far as age, capacity, or even desire. But if you have programs to develop them, and that's why we have an HR leg, right? There's market access, there's HR placement, and training people in communities to be market ready in as far as professional plugins. So yeah, I think we ought to ensure and highlight the ecosystem and the value chain of how we can feed off of each other.
As much as the ESD programs are open for any company, what would you feel like are the minimum requirements for someone to join an ESD? I mean, I can't register a company today and hope to join an ESD tomorrow.
But you can.
You can.
You can. So the criteria is mostly ensuring that you do have a CK document and you're registered with CIPC and in good standing, annual returns are done. Even if you do that, it has to be linked to a bank account, right? And that's why banks are also a very big part, an important part of this program, because they have to ensure that everybody has a bank account. BE certificate, have to prove you're black, but yeah. But we do not restrict any other race, right? It's just that with certain opportunities, especially within government, they have to be BE compliant. And we have to ensure that you are in good standing with SARS. So a tax certificate or a tax PIN. These are the only 4 line items you need to register in ESD program. And then we will categorize you and ensure that you are registered with applicable and relevant industry bodies. So if you're in engineering, ensure that you are registered with engineering organizations and you know what is going on, what the trends are. If you're in construction, CIBD, NHRBRC, and you have to understand the gradings and familiarize yourself with the industry bodies as well. In different sectors, we will then link them up. So the criteria is very minimal, very minimal. There are programs that also empower artisans from these SMMEs to say, oh, we have a free 3, 6 months, 12-month course for artisans. It can be on bricklaying, it can be on electricity, or whatever the case may be, what that's on offer for free for a prescribed period of time. So like I say, the possibilities are endless. And I think if we position ourselves as a company that shows the possibility of what could be done if we do things as a collective with absolute clarity and categorization, not even the sky's the limit.
Okay, cool. One element that I want to touch on, and we discussed it the last time, is the motivation behind starting a business. That most of the time it's just to earn a living, to make money, etc. But in your understanding, especially being exposed to a lot of SMMEs, do you feel like it takes a certain amount of time before they actually get into the realization that there's more to it than just making money and start establishing themselves as this is the actual service that I want to offer and these are the targets that I want to be reaching?
I think it's a trial and error thing, Yann, because for most people, the bottom line is money, whether they need money to pay salaries of the staff members, whether the motivation is ensuring that they eat, cover for their own immediate family. But I think through these workshops, these interventions, and partnerships with conferences and expos and trade missions outside of the country, I think one of the things I neglected to mention earlier is that as part of our market linkage efforts, what we do is ensure that they have trade missions that the DTIC has available to travel to various countries, Dubai, Pakistan, India, wherever, and to exhibit. That's access to a market you wouldn't ordinarily. Then you learn, but before you do that, you have to learn about import and export and the laws and what it takes to reach that. So I think with what we have on offer, the possibility, there's a myriad possibilities to ensure that you're equipped. And when you go to conferences overseas, you'll be amazed on how many sort of educationals are, given, or interventions are given beyond finance. If you even want to study at an institution, an academic institution on a scholarship under your business, not as but personal. So there was a program, MBA program, that a dear friend of mine went to in Japan.
Yeah.
And after that, part of the internship was learning from the likes of Hitachi and these big Toyotas, etc. You come back equipped. And most of these are free because we're trying to build trade relations and relationships. So beyond just monetary value, you could learn, or, be exposed to why and how to expand. And you get exposed to what your company could be beyond employing 2, 3, 5 people and getting just enough to pay salaries, right? Just enough to make impact. There's disruptive innovation that happens in programs in partnership with your CSIRs in your green or technology space. So I think if you put yourself out there and walk the journey, you'll realize there's a lot more than just money that you could gain from these existing programs in the ecosystem.
In your own words, how do you see the future of SMMEs in South Africa? How do you feel? Tell me.
That's such a difficult question to answer, and I'll tell you why. I deal with SMMEs everywhere, and with certain age groups, the revelation is that what will drive them to success beyond showing up is having access and just that daring nature, right? I sat with a few teenagers. It was Youth Day, and I went to go speak, and they had discussions around their career plans. A majority of them have no interest in formal employment. They see themselves as entrepreneurs, and it could be in the creative space. Some will say, I want to do medicine so that I can learn, but I'm going to do a business around it. There was one who said they want to study traditional medicine and merge it with like a degree, a medical degree, a qualification, and open sort of like a pharmaceutical company because they have a family member that's constantly sick and they see all sorts of drugs. Sometimes the drugs make them ill instead of better. Sometimes it makes them better like they were never ill. So they were fascinated by that, but they wanted to be traditional medicine and sort of herbal medicine because they learned that most of these chemicals that are in these pharmaceutical medicines are derived from herbal medicine, right? And it was fascinating, and I learned a lot from that group of youth because it tells me that the future of entrepreneurship and innovation and disruptive innovation is in good hands, right? And that's why the pros of AI and the advent of being a digital nomad and having so much access to so much information, if you know what to do with information that you get, this not even the sky's the limit, right? But also my concern is with a few that I've spoken and engaged with who might not be as exposed as the ones in suburbia or urban areas, who are closed off in as far as, what's available, what's possible, right? In the attitude of, oh, government hasn't done A, B, and C. So because I travel a lot and I engage with different groupings, I'm generally positive, but I'm also concerned about a great number of people. And that's why these things are linked to social ills. Oh, I can't get a job because I don't have a matric. The reason I don't have a matric is there's no money at home. The reason there's no money at home is maybe you're in a child-led home, or you have somebody with a drinking problem at home. So it's linked, it's an avalanche effect, right? And we all have different realities. But I'm hopeful that with those that have access, if they have enough compassion to even impart and go to areas that don't typically have access and inspire somebody, impact anybody. And that's why we do the show. We're hoping someone will reach a short about something that's of interest to them or that hits them and say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this was possible. I wish we could reach even print someday, because some people, we take for granted percentage of people that have access to a phone with Wi-Fi, internet access, because that's a cost, is it not?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I am hopeful. I am trusting that it's in good hands, but I also have a concern, and that's something I'm willing to do something about with these shows. Maybe we'll do a road show where we talk to these youth that don't have access to Wi-Fi and data to watch us on YouTube or whatever platform we're on.
I think it's an opportunity to start doing a roadshow around schools and talk more about this, talk more about of the potential and the possibilities of what one can become just being exposed to technology, just being exposed to information.
100%. I mean, I grew up in an era where we didn't have phones. I got my first phone, I think I was 18 years old, and it didn't have internet. It was one of those Nokias, the spreadsheet, and dun. But I'm saying that to say, I agree with that. It's something that could still work to this day, because I got inspired by somebody who stood in assembly sharing an inspirational story about what you can do and be. And I think this was a pilot, one of the few black pilots at the time. And I'm like, what? You can fly a plane as a black person? So we shouldn't take for granted the sort of tools that inspired us, that people who don't have access, even though we're in 2025, we can't reach for whatever reason. So I'm in agreement. It's something that's accessible. Somebody said to me, who was a great marketer, to say alcohol is so rampant and it reaches all corners and crevices of the country, rural area, suburban area. If you go anywhere, you'll see a truck with an alcohol brand. I won't say the most famous one, but imagine if you, with every case in a township, you delivered books to the local library on certain, whether it's a resource directory or certain things you can look into. We had a guest who spoke about they're now a pioneer in marketing and sales, but when they started, they didn't know what they wanted to do and went a totally different path, right? Because they didn't have career guidance or access to what was possible until they were exposed in university. So I think there's a great deal to do. We just have to be innovative and use each other's networks to do that. Yeah.
I think I'll leave it at that. Could be using alcohol trucks to actually
put books and distribute, because they have the widest reach, right?
Yeah, true.
They exist. They're rampant. They're popular. They have a reach. Why can't we piggyback off of each other?
That's a challenge to them.
That's a challenge to them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mel.
Thank you.